every time I put a video up that includes something to do with what we refer to as wind simulation, I get a whole load of mostly sarcastic comments about the fact that when you drive in real life, you don't feel wind because there is a wind screen or wind shield, and by its very definition, it shields you or screens you from the wind. So why do we want fans bolted to our rig blowing wind at us? It's not, what is it simulating, Cole? And not only do I see it in the comments on my videos, I see it on the comments in other videos. I see these arguments in Facebook sim racing groups as well, because somebody will come back and say, but what about open cockpit cars? You'll definitely feel the wind then. And then someone will go, but you're wearing a helmet, so you still wouldn't feel the wind in your face. And there's this whole childish arguments about who's right and who's wrong. And quite honestly, it's a little bit silly. But when I did that Pimp My Playseat challenge video the other week, there's wind simulators on there, pair of fans, right? And so I got a host of these comments. I'm just going to read out three of them, the top three that I found whilst scrolling through, and you'll see exactly what I mean. So the first one, I won't say people's names, there's no need for that. First one, wind simulation, I genuinely don't understand. Do real rally drivers drive with all the windows down without a windscreen? What is this supposed to simulate exactly? Obviously, the guy knows rally drivers don't drive with the windows down and without a windscreen, so it's just a sarcastic comment. The second one, I don't understand the fans. If you're racing, you have the windows closed to reduce drag, therefore you don't feel any wind. If the point is realism, then the fans seem counterproductive. I've done 155 in my Merc and didn't feel a smidge of wind in the car. Well done, I'm sure you didn't, because you got your windows closed. The final comment, driving real cars with no windscreen. Wind? Puh, okay, sure. All right, now, it's the internet, it's YouTube. We know we're going to get silly, sarcastic comments no matter what. But what's really funny is I explain, every time I mention wind simulation in a video, I explain that it isn't realistic and it isn't simulating. And I go on to explain why it's good and what it does. But people seem to miss it. So this video is not only me having a bit of a laugh at the sarcastic comments that we always see about wind simulation, and I keep using inverted commas, I'll explain why in a minute, and I'm going to explain once again why having fans on your rig is good for two different reasons. So first of all, we use the phrase wind simulation, I think really just because it's an easy way for people to know what they do. What it's actually doing is very loosely simulating speed and acceleration. It isn't simulating wind because, as everyone points out, we all have windscreens for the most part, unless you're in an open cockpit car. And of course, the speed, the airspeed from the fans that we use only hits maybe, I think I've recorded about 16, 17 mile per hour. Obviously, in real life, if you're doing 140 mile an hour down a straight and you were to stick your head out the window, you'd know about it. So the fans don't simulate the actual one-to-one wind speed that you would experience should you stick your head out of the window without a crash helmet on. But what they do is give you an additional form of physical feedback about what your car is doing. And I explain this every single time I mention them, but here we are today doing it again. So what happens is, when you're stationary, there is no airflow. When you're doing 200 miles an hour, the fans are on 100% and they're blowing like mad. And surprisingly, considering it only blows at about 16 mile per hour, it actually feels quite strong. And then of course, as your speed varies everywhere in between, the speed of the fans varies as well. Now with the Sim Racing Studio kit, they have wind curving. So when you corner left or right, the inside fan decreases its speed and the outside fan either maintains or increases its speed. And so as you sweep left to right, you feel the wind changing direction as you change direction. Now again, of course, this isn't simulation because we don't drive without windscreens. We don't drive without helmets on. It's just an additional form of physical feedback about what your car is doing, which way the car is turning, how fast the car is going. Because what we lack in sim racing is any form of physical feedback, without any additional things like this, of how fast we're going. All you have is your screen in front of you and whatever virtual items are sort of coming past you to give you an indication of how fast you're going. You don't feel anything. There's no G-force, you just sat there in your rig watching the graphics come toward you, the track, the rally stage, whatever it might be. So by adding wind simulation, or in reality it should be called speed-based wind generator or something, I don't know, because that's what it actually does. When you add this in, as you're crawling off the line slowly, there's almost nothing. And as you go faster and faster and faster and you're belting down a straight, the wind's really picking up and you've got, and it keeps you cool as well, which is a bonus. But more importantly, you've got this airflow going past you. And then when you anchor up on the brakes and it slows right down, it's just another form of physical feedback about what the car is doing. Now, when you couple this with a tactile transducer setup, whether it's all-in-one plug and play from Sim Racing Studio, or whether you've DIY'd butt kickers and additional rec horn ones like what I've got, and you get all your little lumps and bumps as you're going down, especially in rally, for example. Circuit racing's mostly smooth unless you're hitting curbs. But in rally, for example, the slower you're going, you get the odd little bump, 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 and the wind is blowing very gently. The faster you go, those bumps are really banging away, the wind is flying, and like I explained in the last video, you genuinely feel, as much as you can, that you're moving forward, that you have some directional physical feedback. And again, when you anchor up and it all slows down and it all goes calm, your brain correlates what you're seeing with what you're feeling. And this is what's so important in sim racing, at least for me, is having these physical cues about what's going on. Another example, especially with tactile transducers, is when you jump in dirt rally, for example, and you leave the ground. Prior to the jump, you're going to have been going fast. So you've got all the lumps and bumps, your rig's shaking away and the wind's going, and then you take off and the transducers just go silent because obviously there's no lumps and bumps in the air. And you get this sort of second or two of like tranquility where you're going through the air. The wind is still going because you're moving at speed, but the whole rig just goes silent and smooth. And then bang, you hit the ground and you're back into it again and you're on the handbrake or whatever it might be. And it's all these physical cues that really enhance the overall experience. So, for people who like to write sarcastic comments about wind simulation, no, it doesn't simulate wind. It simulates or feeds back speed and direction of your vehicle. And that to me is a really nice addition. Couple it with tactiles. And let's talk about motion platforms or full motion rigs. They don't simulate anything either. Now, hear me out. Someone, oh yeah, it does. It moves up and down, left and right, blah, blah. Yes, it does move up and down, left and right. You're right. But what it doesn't do is give you any form of G-force. And that is what you would actually feel in a real car. If you corner hard, if you accelerate hard, if you brake hard, what we feel is G-force, whether it's negative because we're braking, whether it's positive because we're accelerating, whether it's positive because we're going around a sharp corner. You feel you're being pushed into the side of the car, pushed into the back of your seat, pushed hard against your belts. You don't just get moved back a few inches and then it stops. That isn't how it feels in a real car, but that is what a motion rig does. Even, I've spent some time in a £65,000 Vasaro motion rig and traction loss and what have you. Great, but ultimately it moves you a few inches, 3 to 6 inches perhaps on your average rig, and then you just stop again. So when you pull away at the line, you get that momentary and you just sit there. You can't go any further backwards. There's no G-force pushing you, and yet we all still want motion because any form of additional physical feedback really enhances our experience. Even a cheap a Doff Reality M2 seat mover like what I've got. It throws me back in my seat when I accelerate, it throws me forwards when I decelerate, left and right as I'm cornering. And if I go over a jump in dirt rally, I get tilted backwards, and as I land, I get tilted forwards. And whilst again, there is no form of G-force that I feel like you would in real life, just that small amount of movement, and some people say more is less when it comes to motion, just that small amount of additional physical feedback really enhances our experience. So this is why you would want a pair of fans on your sim racing rig. This is why there's no need for sarcastic comments from people that don't understand why you'd want it, even though I've explained it in every single video where I feature some form of wind simulation or fans. I explain exactly what I've just explained, which is how they work and how it's not realistic, it's not one-to-one with wind speed, and it's just another form of physical feedback, and yet people still seem to miss it. So today's video is dedicated to all you guys who seem to miss it when I say it in other videos, and to everyone else that perhaps wasn't familiar with wind simulation, you know, or how it works or what it does. So this video isn't to offend anybody, especially not the sarcastic people, but if you write sarcastic comments, you're going to get a semi-sarcastic reply. That's just life. So hopefully it's been helpful to everyone. Any questions, by all means, put them in the comments. Thank you very much for watching, and take it easy.